Physical health. Oh, it's been one of those things that I have fought and fought and fought, and the Lord is finally winning. We want to talk about that today on Dawn and Steve Plus.
Welcome to the Dawn and Steve Plus podcast, fueled by Raphael's Roastery and supported by you. Connect to us on socials or dawnandsteveplus.com.
You're laughing, and I'm hurting right now.
What?
I am sore. This doesn't feel, my body does not feel good. It hurts.
I didn't know.
Right now.
I'm not laughing because of that.
That's not why you're laughing? Okay. All right. Well,
Now I am. But I wasn't.
all right.
But now that you mention it, why? Why are you so
Well,
sore?
I had taken a month off of almost any form of exercise.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't know if Phil Herndon, Tin Man Ministries, with us in the studio here. And I don't know if you know that our family had been doing martial arts for almost a year and a half.
Okay.
And we decided that we were going to take a month off because they were closing the gym for a little while. We had kids going to camp, just different things that it made it like, yeah, it doesn't make sense to pay for our month's membership that month. So we're going to freeze our membership for a month. And I just recently went back. And it hurts.
Yeah.
And I realize my body does not bounce back like it used to. And I know physical health is important as it relates to our mental health, as it relates to our spiritual health. I have got a foot in all of those worlds, I know. And in fact, you shared with us at one point in time over 300 pounds. Never would have guessed that.
Good.
Pastor, counselor, how integrated is our physical health with our mental and spiritual health?
Yeah, you said the word, Steve. It is an integration. Like it is part of who we are. We are embodied creatures. I can't remember the church. I believe it was a church father who said, we are not souls with a body. We are bodies that has a soul. Like our bodies will be reanimated. Jesus has a redeemed body. He came in bodily form. So there's a lot of biblical precedent that the body is really important. And of course, the devil our enemy loves to take something that's true and just twist it. So now often we think of physicality or physical body, and we think of people who sculpt and the perfect bodies and the photoshopping and all that stuff that can easily get us away from the importance of physical health.
That's true. Even talking about it's a little bit dangerous in a way because it has been so adulterated with how the enemy has twisted things. Yet, if we don't talk about it, we're missing out on something that's really important. That piece of physical health when it comes to your well-being mentally. I have noticed such a difference. I have been doing this particular workout place for 3 years. I just celebrated my 3-year anniversary, and I couldn't believe it. I know. Thank you. Because I have never stuck with any exercise for longer than, maybe 3 weeks at best. That mean I didn't pay my membership fees. So it just means I didn't use the gym.
That's why they're so profitable and have plenty of room.
They do, unless it's January. But the rest of the year, they've got plenty of room. But I'm just so thankful that I found something that I like and that I'll stick with because I've noticed, Phil, what a difference it makes to my mental well-being is to get out there and move.
Yes. It's remarkable. It's no secret. The cars are a relatively modern invention, and the body was just not made to not move. The body was made to move. And just notice what Jesus did, not just walking around, but how many physical movements he made. He spit in mud and made a paste for the blind man. He walked over to people. He had physical touch with lepers and other people, and we often forget how important, how tied in they are. Back to integration, Steve. And part of my own story, as I have shared with y'all, is that morbid obesity, and I was amazed. I had a friend who we had actually never met in person. He worked for another company. I worked for a trucking company. He did too, and we had business between our companies. And we stumbled over the fact at lunch one day, we finally met at lunch, that we both had a shared history. And so we were talking of obesity. We were talking about that, and he said, the biggest difference I noticed was how much better my mood was and how less tired I walked around being. It's like, Yes, and think about what your physical body does to your mood, because it is all tied together. The Hebrews had it. We are a unified whole, body, mind, spirit, soul. We are integrated into one thing. We are embodied spirits.
So when, in a sense, you had that conversation with that friend, did you decide that you wanted to make a change as a result of that?
Yeah, I was actually in the middle of that transition. I had moved. This is in Amarillo, Texas, in the Texas Panhandle, and I was in the middle of that getting healthy. I had joined several 12-step fellowships, dealing with addiction. Part of that being overeating. It's hard to be addicted to food because you need it. So I was addicted to overeating, using food to make myself okay.
Yeah.
And I was well behind him in terms of he had already kind of arrived at an ideal weight. I had not yet. But that started me thinking like, yes, I think I'm more patient. I'm less short fused. I have more emotional resilience. I didn't know the word emotional resilience working with a trucking company, but it's what it was. I had more emotional resilience. I had more ability to contain my own feelings without reactivity. It wasn't magical. It wasn't perfect. But I felt better physically because I was increasing the amount of movement my body made, and it was making a difference in all those realms.
Can you imagine how many steps Jesus got in every day?
Man.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, they walked everywhere.
Exactly.
So-
Easy to get that 10,000 steps that people talk about they need to get.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can only, but it does bring home the fact that really that physical movement is so important. But I think we've lost that messaging. We've either taken it to the extreme,
That's right.
or we feel guilt and shame if we're not doing it. I've spent plenty of years doing that. Or we don't really want to talk about it because then we don't want to make somebody else feel badly. Can you talk a little bit about your own story, though, before you started down that road? You mentioned 12-step programs and morbid obesity. What changed?
It was an intervention. I was living in a tiny little trailer house in northeastern Oklahoma. A college student, please put quotation marks around that. I'd been in college for 6 years already, nowhere near a degree, so loosely. I was married very young, and that marriage was disintegrating, and I was desperate. And two guys that cared about me came to that little dark, little dank trailer and said, "Man, you are in trouble." And you're in trouble in ways that we don't even know actually what we're even talking about, but that somehow or another humans are not made to live like you're living. And that really started. And about that time is when I moved. I got a job at this company and moved and started joining the 12-step fellowships to where people in the same room with me were going, yes, I go to things too to put these feelings to sleep that I'm having. And movement was a very big part of that. I began an exercise regimen. I had a dear friend. He had played football at the University of Missouri. He and I did not look alike at all, but he knocked on my door one evening and he said, "I want you to come running with me." And here's this kind of Greek god-looking guy standing in front of me. I was not Greek goddish looking.
Yeah.
And I started running with him, and I literally would attempt to go one more driveway per week on my run. And little by little, with his loving encouragement, he had every reason to make fun of me. He was a great blue chip athlete in high school, played college football, was living there in Amarillo, working a job. But every single evening we would run together, but I didn't run as far as he did. But that was really what started me on the way, getting that movement in my body every single day with a day or two off per week is what started the turn toward overall health.
And as you began to do that regularly, what do you feel like that changed in addition to probably dropping some pounds and cardio is getting a little better and you can run a little further? Like, how did that kind of change your mindset? How did that change your relationships? How did that change you?
Here's what I believe. I'll tell you what did happen and what I believe happened underneath the waterline. What did happen is kind of what I mentioned earlier. I noticed that I was more patient with myself and with other people. There wasn't a ton of traffic in Amarillo, Texas. Then what traffic there was, more patient. more patient with people who were, annoying to me or whatever. I just began to notice mood changes. And what my friend said, I remember him using the word sluggish. He said, I was way less sluggish when I lost all that weight. And I woke up fresher. I went to bed earlier. I could sleep longer at a time. And so little things like that, like, oh, this is connected to not just dropping the pounds, but including improving my cardio health with movement. Under the waterline, we've talked a little bit on this podcast before about EMDR and trauma-focused work, and that works on the idea of bilateral stimulation. So the founder of EMDR is a lady named Francine Shapiro. Long story, way shorter. She discovered that bilateral stimulation with forward locomotion lowered stress levels. Well, we call bilateral stimulation and forward locomotion walking.
Okay.
That's what that is.
I was just about to say layman's terms.
Yeah, walking.
There we go. Good.
Walking. Right. And so here's what I began to notice. A dear friend of mine who's an excellent EMDR therapist in his own right, he said, I really believe that humans, going back to Jesus and before then, he said, I believe that humans were made to move, and they were made to hear noises that God made, birds singing, the wind through trees, gravel, pine straw, grass, dirt under our feet as we walk, hearing our own breathing, for instance. He said, I believe we're made for that. So now this is where conjecture comes in. Here's what I began to notice. I work with lots of people who have very high levels of anxiety. And I had a spate of people coming to me who had suddenly become extremely anxious about flying on airplanes. And they were men, all of them were men, who had been flying for years on business, and suddenly they were caught. And I asked them, well, how are you doing this? And I wasn't asking for any reason other than curiosity. And every single one of them said, when I get on the plane, I put my headphones on and I immediately start playing video games. And it hit me like they're doing bilateral stimulation. They're moving both hands on their phone and playing these games. I thought, what a brilliant move on the part of game developers to create bilateral stimulation. So part of the gaming addiction, slight trail, part of the gaming addiction, phone addiction, I believe has to do with working on that phone in that game gives me bilateral stimulation that settles me down, but the game itself creates stimulation, which is anxiety. And so this instrument in my hand makes me anxious and calms me down because of the movement. Wow. And so taking that premise, so I think the one of the hidden secrets of just walking is we're paying attention to our breathing. I really recommend to people, hey, not every single walk, there's nothing wrong with pods or walking your dog or whatever. Just take some walks where you're not doing anything but paying attention to the world around you and to your breathing. I think there's something to that movement and the breathing and the natural bilateral stimulation and forward locomotion, walking, that's really healing.
The way God made us.
Yes.
Interesting that it'll always come back to the way God made us. Like we can do the simple thing, but it's the hard thing.
Yeah.
Because to put the phone down or not put the ear pods in or whatever, like that's the hard thing now in our society.
Yes.
Is to make that conscious choice. When you made a conscious choice to listen to your friends who cared about you and start the 12-step programs and start understanding health a little bit better, how hard was that? Like if we're addicted to eating a lot of food or we're addicted to alcohol, we don't want to admit it, and we don't really want to do anything about it because it's so familiar to us. How hard was it for you?
Think about it, Dawn, common, good question. Think about it on a continuum, almost like a steady, almost like a bell curve. It was really hard at first because I didn't see any results. I just felt kind of the same. It felt like deprivation. And what began to happen is I felt better. I began to look better. I began to be healthier inside and out, so to speak. But part of the inside was I was a part of a group of people that were in the same corner with me because I was in the same corner with them. And so as my health improved, it got less hard because I was seeing what it was giving me, bringing me more back in line with how I'm made, how God made me. And so at first it's really difficult because there's no way to tell if it's, quote, doing any good. And that is one of the values of having a fellowship of people around you, because it's hard at first. If you have those Me Too people in your corner and been there, Me Too, not just false encouragement, you can do this, but when a person who is doing it says you can do this, it carries a great deal of credibility.
Yeah. What was the hardest part of getting started? Because for a lot of us, we may know I need to move. We may know we need to do some of these things, but we lack the motivation to start.
Yeah. The age old adage of I had a much better chance of starting. This guy's name is Rex Jennings. We still have some contact with each other after all these years. When Rex Jennings came and knocked on my door, it wasn't hard to go move. I was doing it with Rex. It was my friend. And so as you are embarking on any kind of movement, pun intended, if I'm doing that, if you're doing that with someone that cares about you and that does that with you, that is a game changer.
That's true.
Because I don't know, my little 1-bedroom apartment in Amarillo, Texas, I don't know that I would have ever just said, okay, all right, I'm going to do it. I was ashamed of what I looked like. I didn't want to be out in public running. But there was something about my friend Rex being with me that said, we're going to go do this. And so part of the joy of recovery, as we call it, 12-step or otherwise, is I'm not doing this alone.
That it goes back to things that you have said so often, and that's relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And we're in a world that is almost, in some circles, deprived of relationship, real relationship, like
Yes.
person to person, not just screen relationship.
That's right.
Maybe that's the first step toward physical health,
Mm-hmm.
that we learn to talk to a real person. I know that almost, like, to our generation, it almost sounds funny, but it's like critically real for some folks that they don't know how to have a conversation with the person.
Yes.
And that impairs your physical desire to get up and take a walk with somebody.
That's right. And I know it's low-hanging fruit, but I don't think it can be said enough. Social media, Instagram, body sculpting, all those things. We've talked about it. We've talked about it for years, the three of us. Leon Fessinger's famous research project in 1954, social comparison theory is what he called it. He found out two things. We can't help but compare ourselves to other people.
Mm-hmm.
And when we do, we're gathering data about ourselves, not them. And so when we are looking at these photographs or videos of people with beautiful bodies and working out and all that kind of thing, we may think we are looking at them. We're not. We're looking in a funhouse mirror, not because maybe they're not photoshopped. We get a lot of attention to, oh, well, that's all photoshopped. Even if it isn't photoshopped, it's not the issue is not what they look like. The issue is what they reflect, what I'm reflecting back on me looking at the image. And so that's where often we want to stop people from making unfavorable comparisons. Like, well, you can't. So what you can do is as you're depriving yourself, so to speak, of these images on Instagram or whatever, and you're in real face-to-face relationships with people who are in the same struggle you're in, that reflection from that phone or that computer loses its volume and loses its power, and I'm with real people in the same struggle.
If somebody doesn't know where to start to find a real person, because it could be that desperate, would you recommend like a group therapy? I'll say therapy because that's oftentimes where they start, but a group situation where somebody can kind of ease into learning that skill? Yes,
they're the greatest secret in the world, and there are, good and bad of all manner of meetings, but if you are an overeater, if you will go online and Google Overeaters Anonymous, you can go into a virtual meeting if you want and turn your camera off and just listen. And that will be something. And if it's alcohol or drugs or pornography or sex addiction of some other kind or gambling, or there can be any manner of, there's a group for Workaholics Anonymous. Like, there are all these groups. And so it's free of charge. And that can really help build a bridge toward going into, maybe your church hosts a recovery ministry. Maybe you're ready to go into what we would call a secular meeting as well. But there is a way to use electronics in a way that builds bridges toward being able to really build a fellowship around you.
Physical health is just important. And for years, I have tried to ignore it just because it was kind of like, oh, that's the last thing I'll deal with. And then as you get older and some of these diagnoses start coming in, you have to take a really long look in the mirror. And for me, it was a lot of prayer for a long time, asking the Lord to change my heart. And that's another thing that takes perseverance, because if he doesn't do it right away, you've got to continue to ask him that question until he did.
Well, there's another part of this that you just said, Don. Here's what they're really smart people are discovering. When we have increased cortisol, the body begins to store fat. And so if you want to bring all this together, I know this podcast is spiritual health, mental health, and physical health. Well, where the physical health can tie all three of those things together, if we're dealing with our anxiety, mental health, bringing it before the Lord in spiritual health and relationships, it will decrease cortisol levels, especially chronic levels of cortisol, which will stop your body from creating all these fat cells because it thinks it's dying. And so if you want to tie those together, it's legal to say, you know what, you can start just looking at your physical body and dealing with your physical body with other people on a feelings level, and it ties all three of those together.
That's fascinating. It is fascinating. I mean, the Lord gives us everything we need for life and godliness. That 2 Peter 1 passage is just amazing. Thanks to Bill Herndon.
Thanks for joining us for the Dawn and Steve Plus podcast. We're a listener-supported, non-profit podcast, and we're grateful for your generous support. You can give at dawnandsteveplus.com. Our producer is yours truly, Stephen Briggs, with assistance from Chris Westmoreland. Please like and subscribe to Dawn and Steve Plus anywhere you get your podcasts and on all our socials. Links to what we talk about and to Raphael's Roastery are in the show notes below. Thanks for joining us and being our plus one.